co-host of CNN's Crossfire, Stephanie Cutter, SE Cupp. What's wrong, Stephanie, with what the governor just said?
Well, you know, he's casting all of these changes under the frame of voter fraud. Now, everybody should be against voter fraud. Unfortunately, there hasn't been voter fraud in North Carolina. There have been, last year in 2012, with the primaries and the general election, there were 7 million votes cast in that state. And according to the own figures, roughly 112 cases of voter fraud, no cases of voter ID fraud. So it's virtually a problem that doesn't exist. So we have to ask why these changes are actually being made. Now, they're curbing early vote. They're requiring government-issued photo identification, no same-day registration. Now, let's take a look at how people voted last year. Before Election Day, more than half of the vote was already in North Carolina. The majority of that vote was for Barack Obama. Half of the African-American vote voted before Election Day. The majority of student votes happened before Election Day. So let's, again, call a spade, to use that phrase again.
Right.
What's actually happening here is trying to curtail the ability for people to vote.
No, when we have troops overseas dying for our right to vote in free and fair democratic elections every day, not a funny issue, and dying for the rights of other people, then one case of voter fraud should be significant enough to address policy changes. The problem here is that you have one side.
No, you might not, but
when Hillary Clinton is calling one side's arguments phantom and phony, we can't have an actual conversation about your legitimate concerns of voter access and our legitimate concerns of voter integrity. We can't have that conversation when one side is calling our concerns phantom.
Well, when one side is trying to create a problem that doesn't exist or trying to solve a problem.
There you go again. How can we have that conversation when you say our problem doesn't exist?
If there's one case of voter fraud, we should absolutely solve it.
Stephanie, to prove that voter fraud is a significant problem in this country.
A bruise or a cut? I mean, they're going to the extreme here. There's nothing wrong with policy changes to solve an actual problem, but this is going to the extreme. Hundreds of thousands
so your side
of people,
is arguing that we don't have a problem.
So how can we have a conversation
honestly when you are suggesting our concerns don't actually exist? They're phantom. They're like Bigfoot.
Essie, I have a question for you. Don't you think there's at least a hint of what's going on here in terms of voter suppression? Wouldn't you at least concede that? You're preventing hundreds of thousands of people,
Stephanie, that you have legitimate concerns about voter access.
Right.
We also have legitimate concerns about voter integrity. You won't concede that. Your side calls our side phantom concerns. So let's either start from a place in the middle where we're both conceding we have legitimate concerns.
Do you think that what North Carolina has done for roughly 100 cases of voter fraud out of 7 million votes,
that's 100 too many,
accurately and aptly addresses the problem, or do you think it goes too far?
Absolutely. That is 100 too many cases of voter fraud. I could tick off numbers from True the Vote.
Denying hundreds of thousands of people the right to vote, the ability to vote, to get to those 100 cases. You don't think there was any other way to get to those 100 cases of voter fraud?
How would we know?
That weren't even voter ID fraud.
How would we know? There is so much voter fraud that isn't even reported because your side won't allow for the kind of access to information that it would take to have an open conversation.
You know what? You should come out on Election Day and look at exactly what happens at these polls, SC, because there is so much on both sides regulating how people vote, who's monitoring that vote.
You keep saying on both sides, Stephanie, but you also keep saying ours is a problem that doesn't exist. You can't have it both ways.
No, I don't think I said that, SC. I don't think I said that. I said there were, no, I didn't. There were, 100 cases of voter fraud. According to the North Carolina state government, 100 cases of voter fraud. They put policies in place.
That it's a problem that doesn't
policies in place that will now deny hundreds of thousands of people the ability to vote. That's an extreme solution to a problem.
I'm willing to admit that you have legitimate concerns. No one on your side is willing to admit that we have legitimate concerns.
Right. I don't understand why you're not getting to the heart of the argument. You're arguing some process argument. Let's talk about the right to vote and the hundreds of thousands of people who will not have that right now because of the policy changes in North Carolina. That's the discussion that we should be having.
No, that's the discussion you want to have, but there's a bigger discussion
I think that's the topic that Wolf put out there.
But wait a second. Let me just ask you this question, Stephanie. Why do you say hundreds of thousands of people won't be allowed to vote if the governor says it will be very, very simple to get a voter ID card? Why wouldn't they be allowed to vote?
Well, Wolf, there are hundreds of thousands of people that don't have a government-issued voter
But he says you can go to a drugstore and get one for free.
Well, let's see how that gets implemented. It'll be very interested to see how that gets implemented. And especially for people who have to, well, let's give policies that fit the problem a shot.
What problem?
Right.
You don't think there is a problem. This
all right.
Well, we can have that same conversation again, Essie. I'm not sure if monitors working.
Obviously, this is an important issue. It's an important subject. We will continue this debate, and I'm sure both of you will be continuing it on the new Crossfire as well. Stephanie Cutter, thanks to you. Essie Cupp, thanks as well. The new Crossfire, by the way, debuts right here on CNN September 16th, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, only, once again.